Thank Constellation Network, my team, co-founders, and the best community in crypto. Appreciate you guys. I saw this guy chuckling up here because working with the federal government is not all that exciting. But today I'm not here to just talk about all the cool stuff we're doing, but rather hopefully enable everybody here to walk away learning about entry points in which can impact your business that could be funded by the federal government. So hopefully this is something that can impact all of you in a positive way. I'm not going to go through all of my accolades here because that's kind of stupid, but I did want to just show that I'm involved in quite a bit of stuff, whether it's through the blockchain lens or it's through the enterprise lens. But I just wanted to show this so you know that I do have the credentials and I'm not just some joker. So I am Benjamin Diggles. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder. That basically means I'm the business development guy handling consortia, academia, enterprise, federal, general partnerships, and so forth. So I got this juicy QR code if you guys want to check out constellationnetwork.io and see a little bit more about what that is. But to understand what Constellation is, for those that have not heard about us yet, Constellation provides infrastructure that enables businesses and individuals to transact and conduct commerce in Web3. And while I know that's a very high in the sky explanation, to bake it down for you decentralists, we are a base layer protocol, the world's first L0 protocol. We have a double layer consensus algorithm that is custom. We are a directed acyclic graph framework, and we operate a very robust ecosystem. With that ecosystem, we have our own Stargazer wallet, which is very similar to MetaMask, that allows you to conduct and transact our cryptocurrency DAG, after directed acyclic graph, feeless and instantly. We also have our own DeFi exchange that's been built on our core network, as well as we just recently last year acquired a data mining company, a hardware sensor company that allows folks to validate data from a hardware sensor and get paid in cryptocurrency in real time. It's very cool stuff. Last shill plug is that we do have an accelerator that we coach companies to go from inception to token launch if they're interested in working in our ecosystem. That hopefully explains a little bit why we were one of the first 2 companies to successfully lock down a contract with the federal government. That was about 2.5 years ago. The other company was Simba Chain. Want to give them a shout out. Big fan of those guys. If you don't know Simba Chain, check them out. But we went for the jugular on this. And I don't have a federal background, and I'm not one to really praise the federal government. I think I'm a little bit more like everybody here, like not real stoked on the man, but there is a chance here to really validate your technology. And why I'm very proud of this work that we've done so far is that we went straight for the core promises of what distributed ledger technology brings to the market. And that's really around immutable data, security, automation, fractionalized payments, all the stuff that everybody's here to celebrate as part of this conference, right? So right now I'm in that period of performance. It's pretty hardcore. Happy to talk about the details if anybody's interested in what we're doing. But this really proves out that this isn't just some fictitious technology, but that actually can create true accountability from the source all the way to the ingestion, no matter how data is being communicated. So with that, the reason why we went into federal is because as the BD guy, I literally feel like I've talked to every Fortune 500 company out there, and they were really scrutinizing blockchain. And I found out to my surprise that the federal government is roughly about 3 times more adept at this stuff than the commercial space. So it doesn't matter if I'm talking to a Fortune 10 company, their engineer folks would be very skeptical, closed. They didn't want to be the first to jump in. They didn't like the idea of a public ledger and putting their data or their transactions on it. All very good reasons, so I'm not like trying to tell them to just catch up. But I get on the phone with the federal government, and these guys really understood not only blockchain and DeFi, but really where this market is going. And so the biggest difference is that the commercial side is really ROI focused, right? Whereas when you look at the federal government, they care about impact. And this does uncover that we are working with the largest budget in the world, somewhere upwards of like $700, $800 billion. And I know that there's probably some differing opinions of what the federal government is and if you like it or you don't. But there is a big opportunity for projects in this room to get involved that will not only benefit you, but I think benefit society and America at large. One of the proof points is that the White House just put out an executive order, January 26, around how we're shifting all of our infrastructure in the federal government over to a zero trust infrastructure. And I've heard this from large prime contractors as well, that they're all in a big migration effort to make a zero trust infrastructure. And I think the term zero trust is a little misleading. Reminds me of the mid-2000s, we talked about real time, and that could mean instantly to some people, that might mean in a couple seconds. And so zero trust really can be scrutinized pretty hardcore, just like decentralization. And I do love that folks here like to fact check what true decentralization is, right? So with this, the reason why I want to put this up is that this isn't like they're just kind of tipping their hat in interest in blockchain, but that they are starting to make it core to their architecture. And the reason why? No one trusts anybody. Not profound, right? So today I want to call all blockchain projects, and it almost seems counterintuitive that I'm asking folks to compete against us in the federal government to get these solutions into the hands of those that can validate what you guys are building. And what's very interesting about this is that there's this thing called the SBIR. It stands for Small Business Innovation Research. And this is a fund that everybody who's a tax-paying American pays money to go into. And the reason they do this is that we can stimulate the economy with net new technology, specifically out of like Silicon Valley, to get in the hands of the government, but also just make some of these companies grow, correct? So $1.2 billion a year is sitting in this cash bucket for companies to bid against on their solutions. And I'm going to talk through a few reasons as why here in a second, but there's many, many different groups like this, and I'm going to touch on what they mean. So these are not the sum of all the opportunities, but the SBIR is certainly the one that I would start with. So with this, they're called other transaction authorities. It's kind of gross, right? But these OTAs, the reason these exist, and this is kind of like, I would say, the X factor of this presentation, is that we live in a somewhat of a corrupt world, right? We got lobbyists that are ensuring that, hey, if some need is happening in the federal government, that they're going to be the first in line, and they're going to be the first ones to say, you don't need any of that blockchain stuff, just work with us, and so forth. Furthermore, working with the federal government sucks. It's hard. It's really hard. And so, you know, even you had Elon Musk at this thing at the end of last year. Basically, there was this big push from Silicon Valley saying, we're tired of it. Time's running out. If you want our technology so bad, make it a lot easier to work with us, because we're not going to jump through all these hoops when it's easier to make money in the commercial side. So with that, you guys have technology and you need money. They have money, but they need technology. But the problem is there's been this big wall that really has thwarted folks from getting involved in this stuff. So with that, they created this program, the SBIR program. It hasn't been around that long, so we're kind of dealing with a little bit of a renaissance right now, and that's where I'm really pushing folks to get involved. And so they have limitations to apply, like you have to be a business that has less than 500 employees or certain less revenue goals and so forth. Meaning that if you have like a Lockheed Martin, they can't bid on these things. They can't get involved in these contracts. So it's like they really are calling all of Silicon Valley and the folks that have innovative tools to get involved in this. So with that, I want to just say why you should or shouldn't do government work, right? So the first reason why you want to do and lean in is to validate your tech with a significant customer that funds you to build your roadmap. This is a big one, right? I'm not here to like slam accelerators. I just told you we would run one, but I'm not in incubators. But they often take a pound of flesh for a high risk involvement. They'll be like, great, we'll take 20% of your company for 60 grand, and like, we'll see how you do. And that's a pretty hardcore environment. I don't think any of them have, I guess, returns that are that low. But the point being is that then they also walk away with a chunk of your IP and equity and so forth. Whereas the government won't take any IP. They're really good about this. I know trust the government is not necessarily the most popular thing right now, but they're really good about not touching your IP, and they don't take any equity, so they don't have a skin in the game. So you have a chance to validate your technology with some pretty hardcore use cases that you can put a pretty cool logo on that will show that you're actually moving in the right direction without having to lose control of your business. You want to show some early revenue during your development roadmap. These folks will help you build your roadmap, and it's called a thing called TRL, which is technical readiness level. They will entertain companies that are at the ideation phase. You don't have to have production product, which means if you have a technical roadmap that you can align with this program, they will pay you to build that as long as that you are injecting value against their mission impact needs. The third reason is you want to contribute to a cross-pollinate within the federal ecosystem. This means you may have a passion for federal, you want to be a contractor, you want to get involved, and that's not for everybody, right? I just want to say that straight up. But don't get involved if you just want quick money and a logo. You'll get eaten alive, right? And that doesn't mean that you'll get rejected by the host so much, but you might get in over your head. Like when I won our first contract, I was really stoked. But then about 10 minutes later, I had a panic attack because I was like, wow, actually I have to deliver on this now. If you don't intend on being a contractor or not in it for the long haul, don't do it. Like, it's only really for those that are seriously about making impact within these things, right? And if you can't fill the required dedicated resources to do it properly, I've seen this in a lot of companies where they're like, hey, who do we have that's good at writing proposals? Let's just throw one in and see what happens. You really need somebody dedicated that's going to really lead the charge on these activities. So this is where I'm going to leave it, which is encourage everybody to get activated, right? Again, a lot of us don't trust the government, and the idea that I'm working with the DoD, my friends just roll their eyes and they think I'm a crazy person. But what I've learned is we do live in a paradox. That means there's good people and bad people. What matters is the energy you bring to the landscape, right? And I believe that there's a chance that you can actually get the best of all worlds here. And you might be pleasantly surprised that there's some wonderful people that work for the government. So my encouragement is to start at SBIR. They have all these videos that teach you how to go through these multi-phase processes to make it very easy. Again, this is their North Star, is making it as easy as possible as an other transaction authority to bring you into their ecosystem. So with Constellation, again, this is my one shows, you can join our community, you can install our wallet. We have the ability to stake nodes within our DeFi platform, and we even have the ability for you to buy one of these hardware sensors that will validate data and pay in cryptocurrency in real time, truly bridging the promises of distributed ledger and the real world. So I'll end on this because I can't tell if this thing is running. How much time do I got?
You're the last one, so we'll let it run its course. Have a few.
We're going to go into comedy next.
We are absolutely going to comedy next, featuring you and me and the government. So,
all right, great. So with that, if you guys do want to scan this QR code, we just put out a Medium article that explains a little bit of this and so forth. But again, I just hopefully can inspire everybody here that there's pockets of money through a multi-phase program that will reward you anywhere from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars to help you build your roadmap without giving out equity that will benefit your business and hopefully your fellow Americans in the world. So that's my talk, and I really appreciate you guys all having me here.
Thank you, Benjamin. That's awesome. I'd love to know what questions we have. I have so many. All right. Yes, the hands are going up. I will start with you.
Okay. Hey, Ben. So I was wondering what the first contract that you had with the federal government, what exactly did that entail?
Love it. Great question. So the way that this works is they start out by you either picking from a list of topics that they're like, hey, here's our open topics that we want you to bid on, that we need these things, and we've validated within our internal agencies that if we solve these, it's going to make an impact. So you write a proposal, which usually can be anywhere from 10 to 24 pages, that says, hey, I can do this, and here's how I'm going to do it. And they read that, and they say, does this person or company have the ability to make this work within this environment? Not so much are you convincing them of your technology, but do you understand their world to be able to bring it in, right? So that's called a phase one. And they usually give you between $50,000 and $150,000 over a 3-month period of performance for you to take this thing once you win it, to go into the government and say, I'm going to find a customer that's going to validate this. And they have handlers that will help you do that. If you're successful at that, you go into what is a phase two. Phase two will be anywhere from $750,000 to $1.5 million, and that's when they pay you to build your prototype. Great, we got a customer that says, we believe you can do this, we believe you have the technology, now you're going to build this prototype, and that leads to what is called Phase 3. And phase 3 is all about adoption. So it's almost like a double track where you're like, I'm building this prototype, but I'm also working with the stakeholders on all the different development operations or DevOps so that they can absorb this thing and adopt it. If you come out with something that is extremely robust, but their systems just don't work with it, it's kind of a dead in the water. So it's kind of like you have to do that. And then once you get into phase 3, you're a commercial vendor and you're getting paid in perpetuity by the government.
So, like, what are some of the needs, whether it be like accounts receivable, just day-to-day processes that need to be more streamlined? What are some examples of those?
It's like it's every use case. Everything down to I've seen bids for things that allow females to urinate better in moving aircraft. I mean, it gets really, really detailed. In this case, on the tech digital transformation side, it'll be things around security, things around multi-domain orchestration, privacy. Of course, I'm saying all the things that are data related because that's my world, but the use cases are as vast as what you would see in the commercial space.
Thanks. Got a question. I think it was you. You were next, right?
Yeah, thank you. Hi. I'm curious how much of what you built for the government you were able to integrate into Constellation Network, or was it the entirety of it?
I'm sorry, how much we built for the government?
Yeah, what you built for the government, how much of that was only consumed by government services and the government, and how much of that was were you able to pull into your business?
Sure, great question. How much is be able to pull into business? Now, this is the holy grail of this, is to make sure you pick the right type of use case that aligns with your business goals so that they pay you for your roadmap, so that you're not building something that doesn't align with your business, and that takes extra work up front. And that's what's been so beautiful is that when I demo things like, hey, here's what a double spend attack, so to ensure that there's not a man in the middle to corrupt the data using gossiping and whatnot, that's stuff that's core to what we're trying to build. So now my engineers have funding and they have a killer use case to test it again. So hopefully that makes sense.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else have any other
I saw one back here.
Yeah.
Mine's it's a related topic, just around like, the ownership of your information or the ownership of your product. In my experience working with the government, there was some type of proprietary or there we go, where they wanted to, keep some of the information, whether it be photos or videos, and they wanted to have ownership of that. And so if you built something, would you be able to put something open source after they paid you, or would they kind of would they be against that in any way?
Yeah, I mean, that's another great question. So they have a thing called the allocation of data rights, IP, the color of paint, all these different terms that if you get into this world, you'll learn. And they've really gone hard to protect the companies, because if you knew that the government was going to scam you and take your stuff and get weird with it, nobody's going to show up, right? Of course, we don't have too much assurance of that, but they do have legal in place. And so making sure you have the right lawyers and whatnot is extremely important. With our situation, we're an open source software, and we don't store any of the data, which makes it a very weird thing for them, because they're like, well, you need to do this FedRAMP for data hosting. I'm like, well, we don't host any of the data, and it kind of makes their head hurt. So they're having to figure out this decentralization thing as well as they can. But if you're ever concerned about them kind of snarfing up IP or taking a hit, you certainly want to make sure you have good lawyers on the onset. And you can do that pretty cheap. It doesn't mean you have to bet the farm.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. What else we got?
Anybody else? You got one more here? I'll take it.
We got some questions here.
You talked about the different phases. In the phase 1, are you building a prototype?
You're pitching a prototype. So phase 1 is ideation only. You're not actually delivering any technology, but rather you'll say, hey, I noticed that over here you're having a hard time taking data and talking to this guy, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how we can securely allow that to happen. By the way, we've done our research and we know that these guys use these systems. Here's how they operate. So you have to do your work. It's very heavy BD work. And then they look at it and they're like, they got us. They understand what we need. And then they say, okay, now go forth, and we'll even align you with these customers that need this. And, it's like speed dating. And then you meet the person, they're like, wow, this person really gets my stuff. And then that's when you work into building the prototype in phase 2.
Thanks.
Yep.
What other questions do we have? So I have one.
Let's hear it.
So when you're working with government, like what I've heard is that, like for example, say you have a service and it uses, I don't know, in the Web 2 world, Twilio. And then you're working with the government, and they won't let you use Twilio because it's not NIST compliant, it's not secured, it's on, it's not on AWS's government cloud or things like that. How, how many constraints should we expect working with the government around the technology we can use?
A lot. And there's been a lot of controversy in the old government, especially at the Pentagon level. If you've watched any news, that's an obvious statement. But the big one being is that they've really struggled with deployment. It's not so much that these technologies freak them out, they just don't have the time to really go through everything to give it that stamp of approval so that they can scale it amongst their different agencies. So they created this thing called DevSecOps, and they have these things called software factories, which is whatever, but they're groups that work day and night to ensure that the validation of these types of tools have gotten the thumbs up approval. Like Twilio will go through that, but once they go through that, all these agencies now can just go to that list and deploy it versus having to go through the beginning of the procurement. That's always been the thing that kills everything, which is funny is I've been talking about like security and automation, getting excited about that, but as wacky as it sounds, the hardest thing that messes up things in the DoD and pretty much the world is how slow procurement is. It's just a slow thing, right? Regulations, compliance, and whatnot. So with Twilio, a good example is they would go through that hardcore vetting, and then once they make that whitelist, they're easy to deploy. So there is a pathway for all that stuff.
That makes sense. Hands are coming up. Let's go over here.
Perfect. So how much faster do you think that deployment process is going to be now that China's building out their blockchain pilot zones? Do you think the U.S. is going to get competitive and speed up?
I literally pitched in front of a 4-star general that reports directly to the president 2 months ago on this, and I said to everybody, I will give you our technology for free so we could beat China for that exact thing. We are getting our asses handed to us because they take this stuff a lot more serious, and I feel like they may, right, wrong, or indifferent, deal with less infighting than we do, but it absolutely needs to be sped up. And there's some people that are really working hard to make that happen, and there are some people on the inside that are trying to stop it, right? Decentralization freaks out a lot of people because the middleman's gone, right? That's all the DoD is one cluster of middlemen, right? So they're like, I went in there and I explained stuff many times. They're like, you just pointed out like 3 different people's jobs that are going away, and we don't like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know what else to tell you. So I'm hearing what you're saying for sure.
What are some of the most exciting projects you've seen coming through from the federal level that we might see in the next year or two, if you can give that away?
Yeah, at the federal level, when it comes to blockchain, there's not a lot of us. And I would say there's maybe about 10 projects that are taking place. And a lot of them are around spot welding. And what I mean by that is it's like, oh, we want to work with the Department of Homeland Security or Customs Border Control on a unique identification that may use some blockchain, but we're all waiting for them to just kind of bet the enchilada. Let's create standards for how everybody communicates data and follows these rules. But standards are bureaucracy. It's not technology, it's not money, it's a lot of relationship building. And unfortunately, my past life was at Oracle, and I don't have the luxury of going and buying these guys beers like I did my VD days at Oracle. There's rules against that. So yes, there's some really great projects, few that I can't really talk about, but what I'm pushing them to do is show the projects in the commercial space. Hey, look what's happening with DNA data. Look what's happening in the sports world. Try to find things that are relatable that helps them learn this stuff. I would say mesh networks. I don't know if folks have heard of Helium. Of course, we've heard of Helium. Wireless on demand in low connectivity or disaster relief areas where you're able to spin up a local area network or a subnet on the fly. And imagine, like I was saying with those data miners that we have, if you own one of these things or you're a part of a network as a node, you can start to participate in a marketplace by just being available, right? So it's a pretty exciting time where your head unit on your BMW that's dormantly sitting in your driveway is crunching missile launch commands on behalf of a large network. I know that sounds crazy, but that's where we're headed.
Awesome. Got another question right here.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between working with like state governments and federal governments and your experiences and if differences in how they interact with each other and building technologies for either of them?
Yeah, great question. So the federal government focuses largely on security, right? That's their big thing. And that's really, they don't even get into automation or crypto finance and fractionalized automation payments and all that. They're not there yet. Whereas the state government cares a lot about privacy. They care a lot about, data policy, like a lot of these things that are really in the best interest of the individuals in which they represent, versus the federal trying to really make sure that we don't get our asses handed to us from our adversaries, correct? And so you're seeing, like, God bless the governor of Denver for saying that we can now pay our taxes with crypto next year. That's pretty badass, right? But not every state's following that suit. A lot of other states are very adverse to this technology because they think that it's going to mess their books up. And they're not necessarily wrong, and I mean by that is if you look at, like, when Ripple made a donation to a university and then it ended up looking like a scam and it was this huge legal concern, I've watched a lot of academia and folks at the state level just pull back because it's just like, okay, we always talk about it being the swimming pool. You're at a party, everybody's having cocktails, and everybody's just waiting for the first person to jump in. And that's why our governor here in Denver is, we should all be very proud as crypto folks that they're making moves to move in that direction.
All right, let's see. I'm curious about, you mentioned SBIR, and I know that's kind of a small kind of way to get started, kind of the ground up yourself. But I've also heard a lot that you can, find another firm that's in with the government a little bit more than you and has the necessarily approvals. Like, so who should we go with? How big of a cut are they going to take, to have some sort of middle person company that can interact with the government already?
Sure, man, great question. So beware of wolves. So start there. It's almost like when you register a website, all of a sudden you're sitting inbound. Just saw you're starting a business. How can we sell you services? And you're going to see that same thing. You win your first award or you're trying to write an award and somebody sniffs it out. The wolves are going to show up because there's groups out there that have gotten really hip on this other transaction authority thing and saying, we'll take 10%, we'll help you write this, we'll get it in, and then we'll help you with your phase 2 and we'll take 15% and so forth. And that's not necessarily all that unattractive if you don't have the capacity to take some of that on without, in your business from a resource perspective. But they often, be aware because they're not a magic bullet. They'll be like, give us 36,000, we'll ensure that you're going to get listed, and that's not a guarantee assurance. So they do exist. Eagle Point is one. Decisive Point is another one. And there's a few others. If you just type in, I need services for SBIR proposals, the wolves will come out to help you out for sure.
All right, well, before the wolves come out tonight for all of our activities, I want to thank you, Benjamin, for answering so many questions and for giving this entire community the ability to get some access to help fund and make our stuff and make America and the world a better place.
You're one of the best MCs I've worked with, my friend. You're a good guy. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Thanks. With that concludes our afternoon program here at the Infinity Stage of ETH Denver. Come join us tomorrow morning for some more content. Check out Sked and Discord for all the good stuff. And we'll see you at all the usual places. Good night.